All right. Welcome to the Threads of Change Empowering Social Workers podcast. I'm Joseph McLean, Master of Social Work student and also a member of the UMONA Guild. And we're excited to have you join us on this transformative journey. Our mission is to inspire and equip social workers to become champions of change, advancing their careers and enhancing their communities and enriching their lives. Join us as we dive into engaging conversations with social workers, advocates, and change makers, exploring the challenges they faced, the victories they celebrate, and the impact they create. But we're not just here to talk. We're here to take action. Together, let's build a community where voices are amplified, where learning is continuous, and where change is not just a possibility, but it's a reality. Whether you're a social worker or just someone who is passionate about making a difference in people's lives, the Threads of Change podcast is just for you. Check out our Instagram page at UMONA Social Work Unit to keep up to date. Today, our topic is a lifetime of lessons in community work. And our co-host for this evening is Mrs. Shillingford. Mrs. Shillingford, would it be kind of you to introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Mr. Joseph McLean. Yes, I'm Aldene Shillingford. I am a graduate of UWI Mona, both in their undergrad and their postgrad program. And I consider myself a practitioner today. So I used to be a lecturer. So I was a former lecturer in the department, sociology, psychology, social work. And I am still there, but not full time. And I supervise students. But no, I'm spending a lot of time in the practitioner's role. So, basically, that's me. Your mic is low. I'm not hearing you, Joseph. Turn on your mic.
Sorry about that. So you're no myth, you're no legend. You're here with us in flesh and here to pass on the lessons. Now, we'd want to know how it all started. What inspired your journey to become a social worker and to engage in community development work?
Okay, I think with that question, I'm thinking about many associations of influence in my life. Um, the associations of influence have been through relationships over the years, through experiences, which have also helped to create meaning in my life. And this is how I see communities as well. The same way, I think Brueggemann once said it that he saw communities as associations of influence. And so to begin with, I must say, where do I begin now? I can begin with my family, first of
Mhm.
all, yes, because I witnessed a mother who, when our help, who had 13 children, died, she adopted um, one of her children who became my sister. I also witnessed my mom um, supporting two young men, one who lost his parents and one who I think the mother, the relationship broke up. And she took these two young men through school and through university. Right? And all these three persons today have gone through universities and had, got qualified in various areas. So started my family, which I thank them for quite a lot. That's where I think I saw the first sign of caring. Then I
Mhm.
went on to know, where did I? Convent of Mercy Academy Alpha Academy, with its Mercy mission. And with its Mercy mission, I learned leadership. I learned the dignity and respect of others. And when I came into social work and heard that, I kept saying, but this was written on my slate long time. I remember respecting the dignity of persons out there. The nuns ensured that you did that. There was service that we had to provide also to the vulnerable. And our school had a wide cross section of children. So we had wide cross section, both middle class and working class. And that gave me a good grounding into people's lives, right? Because I had friends everywhere. So that was Alpha and its Mercy Mission. And then from there, I went into nursing. I went to England and I was at King's College Hospital in London, became a registered nurse. And I think the nursing taught me what shall I say, compassionate care. Because not only was I providing for the health of individuals, families, and communities, yeah, who were ill, because I was out of the district working as well, but it allowed me to develop compassionate care. I think the compassionate care came also when people kept saying, "Why are you always at the patient's bed?" Because I wasn't only seeing the illness, I was seeing the body language. And when the team of medical people left the room, I would look around and I would see almost pain on the face. And I'd go back and say, "What's happening? How are you?" And then I'd hear all sorts of things that we weren't dealing with as nurses. And so I would have to find somebody who could help. At that time, I didn't even know about social work, but I was finding people and sending messages all over the place. But anyway, come to Jamaica, went to University of the West Indies to work at the University Hospital, and did the same thing. Why always at the patient in bed? Oh God. Anyways, that was just me. So from nursing, and as you can see so far, and then the next, oh yes, the next, where was I next? I was at Air Jamaica. I had a stint at Air Jamaica. So my job was really involved in service, yeah, nursing is service too, right? So always in the service sector where I was more or less responsible for the safety of individuals, yeah, because I was a flight attendant. From Air Jamaica, I went to the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, um, where I learned a lot more about social issues with the young pregnant teenagers who came in to use that center. And that really opened up my eyes because this program was all about continued education. And I recognized how important dealing with gender was because these women were before had dropped out of school and had no opportunity to return. And here was a program, yeah, that was encouraging and preparing them to go back into schools. And I want to tell you, I really love that program. Um, it is at the Women's Center, by the way, where my next critical critical influence came in, a lady by the name of Dr. Melrose Rattridge. She wasn't the doctor at the time, but she did a lot of counseling there. And she was the one who said to me, "I think you should be a social worker." And I'm saying, "Really? Tell me about it." And of course, having had a great conversation with her, I was able to apply to come into the BSc program. So, having done that, I realized that university now was where it was at. So I really need to also mention those at university who had a great influence on who I am today. Let me start with Dr. John Maxwell, headed our unit and headed our department. Was deputy dean, really missing. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Wonderful man. There was also Dr. Baker, Peter Ann Baker, right? Really appreciated her and her guidance into community for me. But I think me going into communities, I also have to thank one by the name, person by the name of Dr. Eleanor Wint. Because when I finished the BSc and I wanted to do MSW, and she spoke to me, I said, "I think I want to be a family therapist." You know, I enjoyed Dr. Crawford Brown's lectures and got great marks. And Dr. Crawford Brown was setting up, I think it was the Jamaica Youth Counseling Center at the time, and I went with her. And thank God I went with her. One lesson for social workers. Anything you want to do, specialize in, I ask you to try and get a job in that area. Because when I went in, I realized casework was not for me. How could I be a family therapist? I couldn't do casework. And then I said to Dr. Brown one day, "Do you mind if I take on a group of persons?" The young people that we were seeing, I had about a group of 10 names, and she gave me two more who had very similar family issues. So I started doing group work with both the youngsters who were coming in and with their parents. I had them on one evening and the parents on another evening. And this is when I realized that this is where I belong. I belong where I can begin to work with groups. And so, having spoken to Dr. Eleanor Wint again, she said to me, "I think you should apply for the MSW in community." I said, "Okay." And I'm so glad I did because that's where my personality really comes to life. Yeah. And so from university, um, it gave me the opportunity now to also work in areas that I really like. All of my practicum at MSW was wonderful. In fact, I think I got a publications out of my MSW paper that I did working with a company.
Mm.
So basically, those were the influences, and you know, those
So,
things that
so it
provided
started
healing.
started from the family in high school, and then at Ear Jamaica, and then it went at the nursing academy, and then
Mhm.
right back to the university where you saw your mentors, Dr. Maxwell and Miss Dr. Winter as well. So we can say there is a multiplicity
Yeah,
of influences, and that would have helped to shape your character. Now,
of
considering that you
course,
have,
in everyone's.
go ahead.
No, no, I say in everyone's life.
Yes.
If you speak to
Considering,
them, you will hear.
you can go ahead, Mrs. Shillingford.
Oh, I say you will. When you speak to people, you will hear it too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because even when I go to community now, that's what I'm looking for. Who are these associations and relationships? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what are the experiences of people out there? What is providing meaning to people's lives out there? That's why I said that the community is not just physical geographic. It is also the groups that you and interests that you have and those groups that you join.
Totally understand. And I would see, similar experiences in my life when I started community, work and studying where people, the influence that people say that, hey, this is something that you should do. And you mentioned that in your story that it was, I don't remember the person's name, but one of your professors that told that, hey, this should be your line of work. So we understand the influence of, the community of friends that you have that can help you to move forward in life. Now, Mrs. Shillingford, understanding that community work has come so far, you would have been in a lot of work with them. What are the changes in community work you would have seen
Okay. When I started and I started doing community work, I must tell you,
years as
I
a practitioner?
didn't meet any social workers when I went out there. I met people working in community development who were nurses, who were teachers, who were managers, who were politically appointed from both parties. I didn't really meet a lot of social workers at the time, but I must tell you, the changes I'm seeing today is that I'm seeing a lot more agencies employing social workers. Mm?
Mm,
There's a lot more connection with communities, with the agencies now that I have to liaise with at times. Um, Changes I'm seeing now also are new concerns, yeah, in terms of equipping ourselves for what we are seeing out there. We're talking about climate change, yeah, and
mm,
food security. We as social workers need to get on board with this. Yes, because as a small island development state, we suffer greatly during any form of disaster. And I fret constantly for our farmers because today I'm hearing about tariffs and what have you. And if we reduce any kind of tariffs here, yes, and I hear about cost of living being high, it would be very easy for our people to purchase because the goods could come in cheaper. But then we would have killed our local agriculture because
yes.
they wouldn't be able to compete with what's coming in. So I think we need to have some serious discussions around climate change and food security and all the things we're hearing around us today about tariffs and duties and everything. We have to find a balance. The farmers need help, persons in agriculture. And I've been working with RADA, so I see it. The resources are not there at times. So we're looking at also disaster management. We have had to do some training in that, some things that we didn't get before. So we have to be up to date on some of the changes. And the other thing I'm also seeing is the health. When COVID came the other day, none of us expected or knew what to do. But what? We had to get creative as social workers,
Mm-hmm.
get out there and continue to work with communities and with the students in communities as well. So it is all about keeping in touch, I would say, with the changes and with the literature about how to navigate and work with it.
That's absolutely right. I totally agree with you. What are your thoughts on AI and social work, even in community development? Do you think that there is any room for AI, or have you ever worked, with any
I
AI?
need to learn more about it myself. I've been trying to put myself into a class for that. I do put myself in a class for everything. But I think it's wonderful because when I am uncertain about certain things, I can go to AI and get some of the information I need. And if I don't trust it, I can go to other sources, yes, to find out. But I think it is very useful. I am just concerned about the disadvantages, which I need to hear more of, and which we have been hearing, by the way. Yeah. And
That's
so, how do we work through and prevent some of those ills? Yeah, that comes with the AI. But I really find that it is a great tool. Yeah, but I need to learn it. So anytime you hear anything going that can teach people, please get me involved.
Most definitely. So, Mr. Shillingford, we know that you're a community expert, and one thing I know you always try to build trust with the community. What are some of the most important lessons you'd have learned about building trust in community work?
Mm, building trust. Well, the first thing I would say is spending time with the community. Yeah, they don't know you. The next thing I would say is, as I teach the classes, is that I have a mantra that I use with a set of attitudes and behavior. The cognitive element. Yeah, we have to pay attention to all those attitudes, that list of attitudes that you need to pay attention to, and the behaviors. Yeah, out there, because as I say all the time, community people see you more than you see them. They can tell you a lot about you more than you can say about them. So make sure you're prepared. And the other thing is, in building trust, you have to leave the personal at home. When you set yourself out into the community, it is always the professional self. Yeah. And so you have to be able to divide what is personal and what is professional, and stick to the professional when you get out there, even if you don't agree, because it's not about you. I know I had a great colleague called Francis Madden who used to say, it's not about you and it's not about me. Right? So
Mhm.
it's not about us, it's about the community. So stick to that. The other thing I would say is getting to know them. Then I would want to add, how do I get to know them? Several visits, transact walks, talking, meeting, not driving through, but walking. Use of participatory research, both the techniques and the tools. I use that as an engagement of communities. And I think you, Mr. McClean, know about that. It is the way that we bring communities into the conversation. Yes? And we can begin to work with them on what I call joint analysis. Because once we begin to do that, then we begin to build the trust. Yes?
Yes.
You bring them on board. And then from there, it goes into what comes next. What are they asking for? A lot of times, it has to do with what comes next. And what comes next sometimes is not supported by who is sending you out there. So that is a challenge. I don't know if you're going to ask me about that, but that is a challenge. Yeah. Because you will go out there and you do the work. And what is required next, the immediate intervention, does not take place. And when you leave communities and that lack of support that is there, I talk about now carrying on into things like helping to form their structure and strengthen it, and building their capacity. That is, it's a process. And a lot of that's the challenge I have sometimes. Agencies do not understand the challenges. And sometimes when I look back at the agencies that do not understand the challenges, it is because they will tell me to one or two I've met that they have social workers working there. I'm so excited. And then when I go there, one of the first things I do is that I do a presentation to the agency on social work. Wherever I go, I present on social work. It has to happen. Yeah? I present on social work and I use Marcus Garvey as his philosophy speaks to self-reliance and organization and structure. So I use that a lot. And agencies now realize that they have people who call themselves social workers, but they're really not social work, not based on what the presentation that I just did had said. And so you might find them now moving into want to become a, want to come into the BSc.
Mm. You're certainly right. One of the conversations I normally have with, with some of my colleagues and even my lecturers in my master's class, I would ask them, persons would ask me and say that, there are so many social workers in the world and are in Jamaica. Why are you doing social work? And I think Dr. Mackenzie tell me that, hey, we have a lot of there are a lot of social workers, but there are not a lot of qualified social workers. So I think
Yes.
based on what you have mentioned, it would go in on that line that Dr. Mackenzie would have shared with me. So I'm happy to hear that. So it's all about continuous learning and building your skills. So Mr. Shillingford, measuring how how these community come out, after the intervention, how would you measure the success in community work, and what have you seen over the years that would, help to analyze and measure these successes in community work?
Well, first of all, in the communities that I associate with, get what I call the capacity building. Yes, I think I begin the successes are based on both quantitative and qualitative measurements. I tend to look. There's no doubt that there's quantitative measurement in terms of what I call outputs, but I tend to look first of all on the outcomes because I am very interested in behavior from where we started to where we are now. In other words, that feeling of we-ness, because one of the things I look forward to working with communities to, is when they are ready. Sometimes communities are not ready, so I look for readiness. And if they are not ready, it does not make sense. Yeah, we have to take them back until they are ready. When you have gone through that research with them, and then you have taken it to the next step, which are the various processes now that we as social workers use, using the skills of interactional and technical skills in working with that community now to build capacity. That is where I'm now looking for success because I now look to see how confident are they. Is the confidence among leadership there? Yeah. Are they now beginning to take action, wanting to take action? Are they owning? Is there a buy-in to everything that's taking place here? And that's how I tend to measure success. I tend to look at outcomes. Yes, I look at the outputs too. It's a quantitative measure, but I tend to look at the outcomes because that for me is the most satisfying. I know I can tend to walk away, yeah,
Mhm.
and they can stand up on their own without any dependency on me. So I tend to, I stay at a short distance because they're going to call. They're going to encourage, they're going to experience uh, issues, challenges, and they'll call you. Can you
Yes.
remind us? Can you know, is there, and I would begin to ask the questions again. And they would come up with answers because they know. But it's just to give them that kind of support and continue to keep that confidence flowing high.
Oh yes, I know you love empowerment, so it's all about empowering these communities to be self-reliant, as you have mentioned about Garvey's principles.
Yeah.
As we journey a little bit more in the conversation, we want to know that you want to know how you would have adapted, as a community work practitioner in changes in society, technology, or policy. How have you adapted yourself to these changes?
Mm.
Were there any major changes that says that, hey, I need to up my game, or
Well,
I
what
need
I
to?
think, oh, all right. No, well, what I think the changes that we are seeing out there, a lot of times in the agencies, because I go back to what is lacking out there in their work with communities. Yeah. Whenever I get something to do, I tend to, because a lot of times the agencies, I can tell you, don't understand what we call powerlessness. Yeah. They tend to blame, they tell me a lot of things that they have been doing and it's not working. And then it takes me right back to powerlessness and the lack of understanding of powerlessness. Because and I align myself with agencies, both with their projects and so when I work with them through projects, through sessions, seminars that I do with them. I've done it with who is it? No, that I PIOJ, for example. I've done teaching as well. I've been the projects with the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica, with Jamaica Social Investment Fund, with NHT, for example. Right? I tend to align myself with agencies because I believe that because social work is all about change, I can help to change policy in agencies just by working with them. Because by the time you get there, one of the first things you do, you not only do assessments of community, but you do assessments of agencies. And you can present this to them, right? So that they can recognize some of the weaknesses and where changes can occur. So if you're a change agent, you're not just changing the client system, yeah? But you're changing those who work with the client system as well, because you want to be able to improve work to the vulnerable. So, and I find them very receptive, very, very receptive to this. And so this alignment, I also see collaboration, very important, especially in today's world. In Jamaica, collaboration. We have been doing a lot of collaboration between agencies, right? I know I really need to thank Dr. Herbert Gale and I thank Dr. Orville Taylor for the collaboration that we have had with the social work unit and with agencies that have been working with out there. Yeah, where our staff and our students get the credit that they deserve and the practice that they need. Yeah, while working with certain agencies that they would never have had the opportunity to work with. And the agencies, of course, benefit from us working along with them and carrying out some of the mandates that they have. So I think today though, what worries me a lot in today's and trying to get that adaptation going is a crime that I'm seeing in communities today. I think we have insufficient attention. Well, you, Mr. Joseph McLean, knew of the last research that we did. What are we seeing? And I have seen it in so many communities. Lack of opportunities from the youth. We always, wherever I go, no matter what the assignment is, I find a way to bring the youth on board because we need to hear. If the youth do not have the opportunities, they form the gangs. They are part of the crime. So we have to intervene at that intersection. Yeah. I find it with early childhood development as well. Yeah. There was a program that I worked in that I really appreciated working with the Inner City Child Support Project, where we did a lot with early childhood development. And where was it? And also, yes, because if we don't start from there and with the parenting, yeah, because I think we
Yes.
don't even realize that parents, that children are having children, teenagers are having
Mhm.
babies, they have no idea how to care. And so this is the environment you're bringing up a child in. Up to the other day, I had a conversation with a school I've been trying to work with because I was on the board and I was trying to say when persons come in and to start beginning school, I think we could have at least one or two parenting sessions before they come in. Yeah,
Yes.
so that we don't wait until somewhere down the line and we're saying all kind of things about parent this, parent that. We should have attacked it from the very. And I tried on a few occasions to do this at first, but somehow principals say yes, but just never happened. Maybe they're overburdened with work too. But it's just that it's not that it is not, it is difficult. It is not. As I said, social workers are creative. So we have ideas. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely love it. And as you speak on, ideas and creativity of social work, what do you think would be the most important skill or quality up their game they should have to have success in the field of community work? What is the most important skill?
Critical thinking, the ability to carry out the research, to do the analysis, right? So that proper decisions can be made. So the research is important. That analysis of situation is critical. So I think that skill is very important. I think also to advocacy. The work I do with communities, with both communities and with agencies in particular, I tend to raise their level of consciousness raising, I call it. Is a kind of advocacy that I use, right, for them to begin to examine some of their policies. So that skill is important, and it's not advocacy only at the agency, but sometimes you have to get into advocacy at the community, at the societal level.
Mhm.
I also think
Yes.
about ethical skills. Yeah, um, ethical skills are important. Needs assessment, what we do in social planning. Yeah, in terms of using data-driven information when we are working with communities, not just doing it and leaving them out, but making them a part of it. Yeah, so that will inform the decisions that we make, and effective communication. Social workers also have to learn finance and budgeting. Yeah,
Mhm.
and how to develop work plans. Yeah, how to help a community to design a project, create the
Yes.
work plan, write a proposal, work with them, help them, teach them how to do all of these things. So those are some of the important qualities, I think. But I begin with critical thinking because that's where it begins. Yeah, because the assessment is critical.
All right, lovely stuff. So critical thinking, ethical skills, analytical skills, effective communication. I know you're very big on communication. That is one something I can say for sure, you know. So
Okay.
we're just gonna reflect on your journey, Mrs. Shillingford. We have a lot of persons online, and I think they would want you have the next generation of community workers who want to make a difference. And that's the reason why we have this podcast. What gem of wisdom would you leave with those persons who want to become the next generation of community workers?
I think they have to first recognize their responsibility, their social responsibility to the vulnerable. That's why we are doing what we are doing. We have a social responsibility to the vulnerable. I think to the next generation of social workers, I would want to say, be careful about the use of self. Yeah. With students who I supervise, I encourage journaling because it is through journaling that you're always learning. It is through journaling that you can recognize your mistakes. Yes. So
Yes.
creating a journal, and it can also be a story later on. In fact, my master's paper was written out of my journal, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yes. And then I would say we make mistakes, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we have to be able to recognize it. I think we have to keep in touch with other persons in the field of social work,
Yes.
community social workers, because it is sharing with other colleagues that we're going to learn, right? I think being creative, and as I said before, what I call rebranding social work, because everybody's a social worker, so we have to show them what social work is all about. And we have to do that first, wherever I go, and I'm invited to do something. The first thing I ask is, do you mind if I do a presentation on my discipline? Mhm. I think it starts off where everybody know we are on the same page. And what I would also say to graduates is that I think you should start community work in your own community. It doesn't have to be your geographical community. It can be a community of interest, but start it. Yeah. If all of us leaving university took on working with a community, yeah, I think Jamaica would be in a better place. But some of us call ourselves,
Definitely.
so we don't do that. But nothing wrong with doing a little community work out there. Yeah. Very satisfied.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree. And I would have seen how you would have applied these skills to your life. But before we close, if you have any questions and you want to share in the chat, you can do so. And Mrs. Shillingford would be more than happy to assist, with that in answering any questions that you may have. But as we wind down, Mrs. Shillingford, I would just like to ask one question. I would want to know how many years have you been? What's the tally that you have in working in communities and doing social work?
About
And
25 or
as a
27
follow-up
years.
question,
Between 25 and 27.
25, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Mm.
What keeps you motivated and passionate over those 25 years?
I think I like results, right? And so I'm always looking for results. I think I'm passionate about it. I'm motivated because I'm always learning. We always talk
Mhm.
about the uniqueness of communities. And so I look for this because they're never the same. One experience can teach me how to work with another, but they're never the same. So I'm always learning, and that is exciting for me. Um, I enjoy being a practitioner. I enjoy that. No, I enjoy being an educator, but no, this other side of my life, I'm actually enjoying being a practitioner. And I also, what motivates me is that I think I'm contributing to students and agency learning. Yeah. And I think I'm contributing to community empowerment and sustainability. And those are the things that motivate me.
Could you give one success story that you believe that would resonate with our audience? One of which community I've worked with before that, when you carried out that work, you were like, wow, this is an
There are several.
inspiration to many social workers out there who
You want
want
to
to work.
name the community?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Woodford, the community of Woodford. I tend to do a lot of East Rural. I'm in East Rural area, and I tend to do a lot of East Rural. I think of Woodford community. Yeah. Um, they are when they started off, they were the Woodford Community Action Group. Actually, this group started with me in a class with Dr. John Maxwell, and he wanted to come to the community to talk. And it started from my student days. And so we used Woodford. And out of that experience as a student, I realized how energized people were when we came first into that community. Yeah. And then we went into the capacity building. And then by the time I started work with them, I was using some of the teachings that I got at university, right? In how do I go through this whole process of building community? And so I take it from there, always looking at the process because it starts somewhere, right? And so I try to go through some of what is required, which a lot of agencies I find are not doing. And so when they come out and they make big announcements, sometimes I keep asking the question, how involved is this community? And then all of a sudden things not working, right? And it's not that things are not going to, it is, you're going to meet that, yeah, because people meet upon challenges that they cannot manage. And so this
Yes.
is where you again will come in. But there was Woodford, and then there was, which was the other one? Oh, another East Rural, Bull Bay,
Mhm.
yeah. We have done a lot of work in Bull Bay, and one of our MSW graduates is now on the CDC in Bull Bay, Claudette Wilmot. And we did a lot of work out there. Yeah. And they have done a lot of sustainable plans. They're about to do another one again. And they're on their own now. And then we worked with a community called Montpelier. These are all with students. Because while I was at university as a full-time lecturer, and since my area is community, I always had students who were interested in community work being placed with me. And so I brought them into all of these areas. So we can thank student engagement and student
Yes.
work of students in where these communities are as well. So try and think if there was any more. Yes, we've been doing some more out in the Montego Bay area, but these are the ones I think of in terms of we started off doing where was it now? Mavis Bank. But unfortunately COVID came and then they had this huge breakaway in the road and we couldn't even walk over it, much as
Mhm.
drive. So
Mhm.
we didn't get the chance to continue with that. But one day I hope that we will be able to go back up there and assess what's going on and see, you know, how we can continue to work up there. But I tend to do a lot of East rural communities, but I've done a lot in the inner city too. But I spoke to the East Rural ones because those are the ones where I brought the students.
Yeah.
And so it's not just me alone, but his students and I. We, we did it.
The we factor.
Yeah.
Mrs. Shillingford, I just want to ask you, considering that, the field is expanding and there might be some overlooked areas. What are some of the opportunities in community work and what can social workers do to take up these spaces that are not filled?
Opportunities where? At agencies?
Just in general in community work, are there any gaps, in terms of opportunities for community workers?
I think it has a lot to do with when you see what I usually tell students do is that sometimes jobs are advertised, yes, and you think it's not for you. Up to the other day, I was talking to somebody and they asked for project management. And I'm saying, why isn't that for you? Did you do your social planning course? Yes. So I think sometimes social workers are overlooking. I think the way they outline the prospects of jobs out there, you're not seeing yourself in it, but if you read carefully, there's so much you can do in that. And sometimes you have to just push yourself into it and let people see that you can do it. A lot of the time, the things that I've done, if you really consider it, we're really not trained in that, but what? We have critical thinking. We can't go into it because whatever we don't know, we can go and find out about. And so one of the things with social workers is upgrading yourselves, you know, upgrading yourself at all times. So we have social planning here that we teach in our undergraduate program. Yeah. And I think um, we also have project management at Mona
Yes.
School of Business. It's two things that I would want to be part of. Another thing I'd want to, social workers to get in touch. There's a lot of jobs out there for evaluation, right? And I think that is an area that we also need to consider. I think there's a course on university campus. I don't know if it's in the social work program. I think it's in the sociology program that I think you could also add to your repertoire of knowledge and skills. Evaluation of programs. So those are the ones because the
Yes.
jobs tend to come out in those areas and you don't see yourself in it. But you can do and you can evaluate too, because you have done evaluation. Yeah. But perhaps you might want to shore up yourself by doing these things. And I want to say more in school social work. Thank God Mona was able to introduce school social work. But I'm not seeing them out
Mm.
there in the schools. I think that we need to have so much more social workers out there because the schools is a macrocosm of communities. Yeah, that's where you have whatever is taking place in the community is taking place in the schools. So you need social workers at the schools working along with the social worker in the community. Yeah, so that combination and collaboration is also what I see as important.
Certainly, you are correct on that. Mr. Shinovan, I'm seeing in the chat, a lot of persons are asking, they're saying that you are a regionalist. You have worked not just in Jamaica, but you have worked across the region. We haven't touched much of that, but if you're able to shed some light on your work in the Caribbean, even with the Caribbean internship program and stuff like that, could you just share to our audience how you would have worked assiduously in getting those programs
Right.
off the ground?
The Caribbean Internship Program started when I was down working with the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica on a project called the Inner City Child Support Project. And the Bernard Van Leer Foundation in the Netherlands is the one that has an interest in early childhood development. And while I was there at the agency at the time, persons were not qualified in social work. And I asked if I could bring along some students to work in the community that had enormous impacts. The students that came along influenced the persons at the agency at the time, and they were able to come in and do their degree in social work. One
Mm.
went and did guidance and counseling at the time, one went into education, and one went into social work. So we had, because they were saying, so when the project is finished, can we still have those students coming here? And I used to say to them, no, they can't. Who is going to supervise them? None of you are social workers. And then all of a sudden, everybody start coming to university or go wherever to go get qualified. And then students continued after that. Well, having done that program, the Bernard Van Leer had asked me to look through the Caribbean because they liked the idea of the internship. And so I had to do an evaluation of early childhood development agencies in the region to see whether an internship would suit them. And this is how the Caribbean internship program was developed. Because they asked me now to design it. They sent me to about 6 Caribbean countries. So after that
Mm.
evaluation came, okay, could university now get involved in putting up an internship program? And I was so happy. Started with Mona, funded by Mona, given some support by the Environmental Foundation of Jamaica and the Bernard Van Leer. And then Van Leer started to talk about sustainability. So then we realized Mona could never sustain this because they were saying by this time we collaborated now with Cave Hill and St. Augustine because what we were seeing is not only the need for early childhood development, but early childhood development and the needs of parents and community persons that we were meeting out there could not take place only in the field. So we had to align ourselves to the social services in the region. So we made links with social services where both our community um, caseworkers and psychology students could be assigned, yeah, to meet the clients that were coming in from the Bernard Van Der projects out in the field. And so with that, we used to send 30 odd students a year from across the Caribbean, Cable, St. Augustine, and Mona. And I thank Dr. Um, Rhoda Reddock out of Trinidad for pushing that there, and Dr. Barito at the time for pushing it at Cave Hill. So they brought in Cave Hill and Mona, yeah, to work along with Mona. And so we would have assignments for our students each year who are in there doing great work. No, we used to advertise it a lot. We are trying to see if we can send at least one social worker this year because I have been speaking back to I spoke to the dean, the present dean, who was asked me to speak with the head of department. And we are trying to see if we can even maintain contact with one because they do ask. I have three, I have three countries now that are willing to partner with UWI. One is Belize, one is Antigua, and one is Dominica. But we want to try for one this year. Let's try and see if we can send just one to partner with whichever one of these, right? And then we can probably try and pick it up next year to see how it goes. But so very shortly, we were asking for one social work.
An opportunity out there for social workers to
Yes,
get involved in
yes.
regional work.
Oh yes. But it has to, and you see, Bandia spends so much money on creating these linkages for us. You know, I feel very disheartened because sometimes I'm wondering if people think that this is my personal thing. You know, is Shillingford project that our social work project? You know, and it's not personalized. It needs to be knitted into the fabric of the university. They spent a lot of money building these linkages for us to go to and do what we did. I wrote two or three papers on it.
Mm.
Yeah, but
Certainly
listen, you
something the
mentioned about the
university
money,
should
so
look
I
into.
don't know what we're going to do. We have to see how we can do it. If you can create a partnership between the student, the agency out there in the Caribbean, and the university. The university gives something, student pay something, and agency pay something. I'm thinking children could be helping to pay the airfare because they're
Mm.
getting something out of it. So we want to look at it differently now. Because in the beginning, everything was paid, except for when we began to partner with the agencies. They began to pay for accommodation for students and in-country host and
Yes.
university funded. Yeah. So we have to talk about how we can do it again and cut down the costs.
As I said, collaboration is very necessary in community work. So having the agency, the university, and the students coming together, that's how we can make change in our society. And that's why we have this podcast, so that we can share these stories and people can be inspired by the work that you have been doing and others have been doing in this field. to make a difference in our society today. Mrs. Shillingford, I worked with you for approximately, I would say from November, and you have been my lecturer and my supervisor. And I can tell you people that Mrs. Shillingford, listen to me, Mrs. Shillingford has been such a blessing and inspiration to my life. You know, she would have taught me a lot of stuff, but I can just break it down in three simple things. When I first met Mrs. Shillingford, I got on a phone call, and when I got on the phone call, she said that, Mr. McLean, do you know that I'm a supervisor? Do you know that you have an internship? And I was like, I never knew. I was confused. I know that I was on an internship, but I never knew that Mrs. Shillingford was my supervisor. And what she taught me was the importance of application of theory. The first call I had with Mrs. Shillingford, she was talking to me in the academic language. And people, I never knew anything. I never did social work as my first degree. But Mrs. Shillingford, from the very first time I had contact with her over the phone, she spoke to me about the importance of social work and the reason why I should apply theories. And this is something that I use every single time, every single time. She will pressure me with the theories, right? She taught me the importance of communication. And she would have highlighted effective communication. If you do not communicate properly, you're going to fail in the social work field. She talks about the importance of, building relationship with the community. That is something that she's very big on. The community is your client, and you have to ensure that you are able to work with your client and meet the needs of your client. You know, she taught me a lot of stuff in terms of project design. All of these things have made me into a better student of social work. And I'm very appreciative for all the lessons that you would have shared with me and the lessons that you will continue to share with me and other social work students now and in the future. So if you have any more questions, you can share them. But we have come to the end of our podcast. Mrs. Shillingford, do you have any final words before we leave?
I want to thank you, Joseph McLean. I'm so happy to hear about the impact I've had on you and your learning, right? Warms my heart. Yeah. So I thank you for that. Well, I am only hoping that the students are interested in coming to work, but that's another thing. Students tend not to be interested in community. It's almost like you're motivating them to be part of it. Yeah. Because I never forget somebody saying, no, so they're not interested in Michelle for our community. And I remember who said it because um, did she say it in my hearing? I think so. And then one day I'm sitting on a interview panel, and the very person who said there was an interesting community came in for an interview. Oh yes, but they weren't interested in it. But what? They couldn't get a job elsewhere. I suppose it was casework they were interested in. And so they came in front of me. Wrong move. Because I went right back to the class. And the questions I asked was out of what I taught. Yeah. And then they realized that, you know, you have to have some knowledge of community. She didn't do badly, but she didn't give me what I was looking for. Certainly not in terms of attitude and, what I expect of a community social worker. So be careful what you're saying out there because you might put me up on a panic. No, no,
Yes.
no. But as long as you know your community, you don't have to be working there. As long as you know what is required of you, hmm, and that you are motivated and that you have those skills, you have learned them, yeah, and you don't have to know them very well, but you can articulate them, which means that all you need is a little practice. Yeah,
Yes.
I think
Mhm.
that's it.
I think I saw a hand up, Miss Robinson. I don't know if you have something to share. I think I saw Miss Robinson, Hall or Hall Robinson. Yes. I don't know if it was a mistake, Miss Rose. I guess it was a mistake. All right, so Mr.
Yes.
Chinapod, we have reached the end, and we're so happy that you'd have shared your story with us, and we're really appreciative of everything that you would have done in community work and what you'll continue to do. So thank you for tuning into this episode of Threads of Change, Empowering Social Workers podcast, where social workers come together to inspire, empower, and effect positive change. Thanks to our guest, Mrs. Shillingford, for coming on today's podcast. Our team, Rashad Ford, Miss Tessie Scott, Dr. Sharon Mackenzie, and Dr. Joanna Simpson. Thank you to our treasured community for joining us and sharing your views. We wouldn't have been able to carry out this podcast if it wasn't for you.